is going on, Sooner Nation? Thank you all for tuning into another episode of the Barry and Mack Show. As always, myself, Barry, personal trainer, sports performance coach out of Tulsa, Oklahoma, and alongside me, former Sooner wide receiver, 2000 national champ, Mr. Damian Mackey. How are we doing tonight, D Mack?
Part two, let's jump right into it.
Jump right into it. And as always, podcast brought to you by OU Insider. Go over to ouinsider.com, grab yourself a membership, doing a lot of cool stuff over there. But this is part two of an episode where we're breaking down positions and we're throwing some punches. We're giving some hot takes. We are bringing the juice for you guys. And tonight we're doing wide receivers, right? D-Mac, this is your position. I'm going to let you speak candidly on this. I think this is a spot where people are really curious to know what you're going to say about some of the guys who have been brought in. I'm going to certainly try and add some color with some of the new guys. Burks, to me, was a fascinating player. And we'll obviously talk about him because the spring game was so mega for him. But also some guys people have forgotten about, right? Your Andrell Anthony's, your Jalil Farouk's. How quickly people are forgotten about with just a really good spring game. And all of a sudden, it's like these other guys never existed. So to get this thing rolling, as we've done with every other one, we're just going to go down the names of the top guys.
Yep.
And also want to hear your take on some of the position groupings and how you might do that this year. So I'm just curious to see. But Andrell Anthony is a name that a lot of people know. We've said it a bunch. I've said it a ton. When he went down a year ago, it really impacted the offense. I think having him and Burks are that is as formidable of a tandem of a part A, part B, or part A 2 that you get in the SEC. I think speed wise and just pure blow by you athleticism, those guys got it. Nick Anderson, also a massive factor, in Deion Burks, of course, who I mentioned, and then continuing down the list, Jalil Farouk, who had a very disappointing bowl game. And I think that has been what people remember. But people also need to remember that he's been a player for Oklahoma. He's been a guy who he's made big plays in big games. He hasn't hit the level that I think people thought he would as a 4-star. He came in with Caleb Williams. He stayed when Caleb left. He was a devoted Sooner. He said, nah, you go do your thing out in LA. I'm going to stay here with the team. And a guy who we've talked about, Jaquez Petaway, another player who's going to be a factor. Brennan Thompson, who we got to see towards the end of the year. I think he gives OU an interesting dynamic, especially with the vertical pass game and having a guy like Arnold who could really stretch the field. And he showed against Arizona
in the bowl game.
That's going to be a piece to this offense.
I believe Okie Light too. Was it Okie Light early in the game? Was it Okie Light?
Yes.
It was Okie Light. I believe he had a big
Brendan
play.
Thompson. I think he had 2. And there was one that was missed. Right. I think there was 3 3 go balls where 2 I think they connected on. One went for a score, if I remember right, and then the other one was a miss. It was an underthrow that I think ended up being an interception, actually. So Brennan Thompson, and then I believe your JJ Hester I think he's still on the team, but still a factor on the squad. So give me your 3,000-foot bird's eye view looking at the receiving core. How do they stack up in the SEC? Who are going to be some of the top dogs? Who takes the most snaps? And then I think this is probably going to call for another stake bet this year, where we're going to have to figure this thing out. Every year, I think the touchdown reception question is so good because it's such a hard thing to predict because you don't know who's going to be the favorite at the goal line, who's the favorite. Like, you
Stoops
don't
has
know.
five touchdowns in 2 games. Like, how does this? and then Anthony Anderson scores that last one to make it a tie. Like, thank you, Jesus.
Yeah.
You're texting me like, you owe me steak again, and then he scores. Like, hell yeah, it's a tie. That was good.
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious, man.
Good times.
Yeah, bird's eye view, man. How do you view this position group? Where do they measure up in the SEC?
I think most people who follow us and has followed my narrative around receivers knows that I'm very hard on the receiver group. I have always been. Um, I always say my favorite core is the '04 core. You talk about star power, NFL ability, um, big plays, turn screens into TDs, versatility, depth. I mean, that '04 unit, listen, we won the Natty. They were head and shoulders better than us. And I feel like they had some of the residual impact of our toughness. We were tough as nails. You were not going to punk us. Like that was not an option. And we had guys who had, 4.4, 4.3 speed. This group has the ability. I think this group may have the highest ceiling, including '04.
Wow.
I do. And
Wow.
I know we're on YouTube now and we got a bunch of new listeners. But people who have listened to our pod, people who have seen me and my approach to the receivers since I first got into the message boards, and shout out to the guys who got me there years ago, and obviously being on Rivals now, they know I'm a hard score at the receiver position. It's just because I played it. I trained guys. I just, that's a
You
position
know
that,
this, know the spot, you know
yeah,
the
man,
position, and you
I'm a
can you
student of
see
the
things
game.
differently.
I'm a student of the game in that regard. Here's the thing. So you brought up Andrew Anthony. Um, he was our bona fide one, which is crazy because to me, I think he's our fourth best receiver now. I
Mm.
think his injury opened the door for Anderson, who has a higher ceiling than him as
Yeah.
an X.
Mm-hmm.
And then you got Gibson, who Gibson's a guy who's so interesting because he's a stretch tight end, which by the way, I'm going to talk about position groupings here later. We were kind of, I was telling you offline the shit that pisses me off. I'll speak to that.
Yep.
Position groupings
Yep.
has to be done correctly, right? But he's a guy when he's in the slot, he's not playing slot receiver. If you watch his route tree and the routes he's typically running, he's running Y routes. I'm 99% sure when he's the slot receiver, he's the slot Y. He's not the
That's
slot H.
interesting.
Yeah,
That's
yeah, yeah, yeah.
interesting.
But he's also quick enough, explosive enough, and has the ability to have short area quickness. I wouldn't say burst because a guy like a Burks is burst. Brennan
Mm-hmm.
Thompson doesn't have a ton of burst. He's just gonna run by you.
Yeah.
By the way, Farouk has burst, short area burst.
Mm-hmm.
He just has now long speed, but Gibson can play Z. Go watch the games at the end of last season. They're both on the field at the same time in some of our situations as the outside receiver, which means they're X and Z. Those two guys are both 6'4" plus and have a ton of game experience. Those two guys were the best receiver on the team at different parts of the season. That's scary. And then you bring in Burks, who is the alpha of the group. He's a guy in the way the game is played today. He's the guy that's going to make every defense have to either have sub packages or spies
Mm-hmm.
or robbers. They're going to have some pre-snap decision designed to take a part of the field away from him, which turns the game into a chess match, which means the offense is on the offensive. And if defenses have to do that, and as an offense, we can guess correctly based upon data and film and habits, that's how you score TDs when guys are wide open. And so when you have a guy like him, he's got to stay healthy. He's got to continue to improve, but like he's already just jumped off the page. And here's the thing,
Yep.
Barry, his talent is going to be a value add to the X receiver who's going to see a ton of one-on-one, to the Z receiver who's going to see a ton of big zones because they're going to be afraid to bump. If they got to bump him, then they've got to bump, right? Or do some type of combo. And it's going to be a huge asset to the running backs because defenses are going to have to declare or guess. So Burks is one of those guys, assuming he stays healthy, and obviously based upon what I see, this is a projection. He gives the offense a ton of versatility. Okay, so I look at the team and I say when Andrew Anthony, who was your bona fide one, but think about this, right? Anderson was a pup. He didn't know what he had. He had to play so much. I think Anderson thinks I'm a one. Like if I'm Anderson, let me give you
Yeah.
an example. I
Okay.
had to play so much in '99. I had better stats in '99 than I did in 2000. I had to play so much. I came into the 2000 season like I'm not a two. There's no way I'm a two, right? Like you got to play me. Anderson Anderson, I know he feels like that. But the
Yeah.
kicker is Gibson. Gibson was like, bro, I was the best player at receiver late in the season. And in some
Yeah.
situations, I was making, I think in the Arizona game, he made a key catch that gave us the opportunity to go and win the game. And then obviously things didn't work out. But like Gibson showed everybody, like, dude, I'm kind of a 1-2. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm kind of a one. And then you go to the spring game and Burks like, you know what I'm saying? Hold my beer. You know what I'm saying? Like both of y'all hold my beer.
Yeah.
I'm that dude. But Anthony says, go watch tapes of week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4. I caught all the third down catches. I won inside when they played bump, right? As a guy who sometimes he was the guy who Dylan couldn't get the chemistry with him early on the
Yeah.
season. And there's a bunch of near misses because
Mm-hmm.
we're talking about DG throwing from the hip and it's a moon ball. It's not a ball like Jackson can throw where he can just put it on you.
Yeah.
Anthony's like, I missed out on probably 200 yards, 300 yards of opportunity, right? Because of the chemistry. So
Yeah.
I'm not even talking about any of the other guys yet. That group has the opportunity to literally be like the '04 crew. The difference is you've got some 6'4" guys who play with a big body, right? We've had taller guys in the past, and it's like, yo, I can't meet. Like he should be mossing that little 5'11" dude. Like,
Yeah,
yo,
man.
you know, and nobody knows how to use his hands off field. Why can't Matwire use his hands on the? I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, you know, we we had
The board
questions,
don't
right?
like that.
We
That's
had
funny, man.
questions. We had questions. We had tall guys who left a lot to be desired. We got tall guys now who play big, which is
They
going to
get
be
after
good and
it.
appropriate for the SEC. Okay, I want to speak to Petaway. Petaway's a guy I think I spoke to about him in maybe a couple
We've talked
episodes
about him a
ago.
little bit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's a pup though, so I don't want to just toss him like people are tossing PJ. But he's in a room crowded with dudes. Like he's got a room. Like he's gonna have to work his tail off. And we kind of recruited a 2.0 version of him with Dragons, who
Yeah.
might be faster, and he has the after the catch wiggle. So Petaway's a guy who I think this is going to be a crossroads season for him, but you just got to give Emmett, man. Shout out to the I-20
Shout
corridor.
out.
I'm back out here in Dallas. And by the way, I'm gonna be North Crowley plays Lancaster, I think week 1.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a huge game. My buddy's the head coach at North Crowley, which by the way, they're banking on beating Dunk this year. We'll see. Um,
Okay.
but Lank has the kid who I love.
Yeah.
So I'm excited because it's just like OU is turning into a place where big, long, athletic receivers, X's, like real X receivers. Think about it. All of our like greats, none of them are X's. Mark's not an X.
I
Broyles
know.
isn't an X, right? CD Lamb can play X, but he's better at Z. He plays Z
Yeah.
on the Cowboys. You know what I'm saying? So like we are now producing X caliber guys, and I think he's next on the list. The receiver group is as good. I believe they're as good as any group in America. I don't want this is not intended to be a knock on DG, but when Jackson played in the bowl game, all of a sudden the passing game hit another level, and he missed some
Mhm.
throws, and they missed some catches, and obviously Farouk has the big fumble. But like just the potential, just the danger that the defense has to address. I mean, defenses have seen enough film to see all four of those guys I named, Anthony, Gibson, Anderson, and Burks, to say, oh shit, 6'4", 6'5", right? 6'3", 4'4" guy from Michigan. And then Burks is a guy who's explosive as hell. He's a poor man's um what's my cheetah? Like that's like
Yeah.
he's like a poor man.
Know who he plays like? He plays like Antonio Brown.
There it is. I love it. Ooh, I
Yeah.
actually like that comp a lot. But I gotta watch because it's crazy as AB is, his routes, bro. Oh, his
Yeah.
routes, he's a top 5 all time
Oh,
route
dude.
guy. AB's
Does
routes
yeah.
are ridiculous. Now, last but
Yeah.
not least, um, I agree with what you said about Farouk. I just don't know where his skill set fits in. He cannot compete with Burks in the slot. He
No,
can't.
he can't.
He's not a Z that's gonna be able to challenge someone like Gibson or one of those other guys at Z. Clearly, X is out of the question moving forward. He's a guy who's going to battle, and Petaway's probably chomping at the bit, wanting his reps, right? He's not a guy anymore. To me, I think Brennan Thompson is an auxiliary. So the same way that Gibson is like a Y when he's in the slot, obviously Burks is an H. I think Farouk is a 2 at H is a really good position for him. But Brennan, when Brennan is inside, the inside receiver, and he's running at the safety, it's literally going to be very similar to like Kansas City at the college level. Well, now that they've got the kid from Texas, and then obviously they've got
Yeah,
Hollywood.
the worthy. Yeah,
When those inside receivers are running at safety, safeties have to haul ass. They've got
yeah.
to line up at 15, maybe 16.
And you
And
can't
so,
sit on anything.
bro, that's going to open up the draw game, the
Yeah.
delay game, the screen game,
Yeah.
right? Like that's going to put defenses in a dilemma.
Yeah.
And so there's just, if I have an opportunity to put Farouk, so if I'm playing safety, which by the way, I was an
Yeah.
all-state safety in high school. I came to OU as a DB, right? And I really
Yeah.
should have just played safety, but I was hurt. If I'm playing safety and Farouk is lined up in a slot, I line up at my regular depth. The
Mm-hmm.
moment Brennan Thompson comes in and he lines up in the slot, I back up 3 steps, or I back up 2.5 yards. Maybe not 3 steps, that's probably 4 or 5 yards, but like I back up because if I'm his man, or he's my man, right? Even if
Yeah.
I'm in zone, safeties read 2-1 or 3-2-1.
Yeah.
If he's the inside guy, I can't let 3 beat me first. Or if he's a slot, I can't 2 beat me first. That means he's my guy, even in zone. Safeties have to account for him. That is a huge difference between Farouk, who has short area quickness, who has good, he's got tough hands. He's a good guy, yak after the catch, but he doesn't scare a defense. And he had a terrible bowl game. So he's a guy who I think he could sink or swim. Um, one of
Yeah.
my best friends on the team, one of my very best friends on the team, and he's a guy I came in with, and he's a guy who's made some big plays for OU. Go watch Curtis Fagan's senior season, 2002 season. He's a guy who essentially got demoted because Rankins and Clayton and Willie P and Brandon Jones, these guys are all coming in and they can touch their ankles.
They
You know what I'm saying?
elevated.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Like there's more competition there. I look at Farouk and I say to myself, like, what is his niche? And I don't see a space where his value add is worth the seniority
Mm-hmm.
because guys
Yeah.
had to play last year and they showed up. So it's going to
Yeah.
be an interesting group to see.
Yeah. I completely agree. I think Burks is so here's the way to look at this is just you have players on this team who would be top dogs on probably every other SEC team, save LSU's got some really good players at receiver.
They lost two
Quarter
first rounders. Who they got coming? They got some,
oh, that's right, they did. Those two
both
guys
of
are
their
gone,
guys. Both of their
so
guys
that'll
are
be
first rounders.
so throw them out. Georgia has been consistent with recruiting, but there's unknowns there. OU, what Ole Miss, maybe Trey Harris comes back. He's a really good player for them. Trying to think who else they got at receiving core.
Missouri's probably got the top
Missouri's
one or
probably
two
got the
receiving
top.
cores.
Yeah,
Alabama. Oh, the kid from Bama transferred to Ohio State,
yeah,
didn't
he
he?
left. Yeah,
But Bama or Georgia are going to by default. Missouri is the school that their receiving core is coming back, and they've got a
yeah,
ton of talent.
and Texas losing Worthy. I think they lost
Texas
another.
can kiss
Yeah,
my ass. By the way, they can kiss my ass.
yeah. You don't get in trouble no
Man,
more.
I know, right?
Sorry,
Like,
no,
go somewhere. Yeah, that was my other
but
soapbox. Like, how dare you say we get Texas?
yeah,
When? Where? Show
yeah,
me. Nah, they
yeah.
got guys. They got unproven guys. They got some
So
guys, but they got to show it.
yeah, but have you have an Anderson and a Andrell Anthony who at any point have the potential to take the top off of a defense. Getting a guy like Burks, in my opinion, is probably if you look at Dominic Williams as your biggest add on the defensive side of the ball, what Burks does with the receiving core, he is a player in, I'll say, when Tampa, this is almost a good comp. When Tampa was able to acquire AB, it changed the game for Tom. And that is why they won a Super Bowl. But without him, they were really good. With him, that they win a Super Bowl. And that is because he was He was a player who consistently got open every single play. And Anderson has been that, but there's been I don't think he's I don't think he sits down in his hips well enough just yet. Well, we'll see this coming year in terms of some of the routes where you've got the little bit shorter routes. You've got to be able to drop the hips, explode out. Those are things that Burks excels at, but can also take the top off and outrun you. He's a guy who in the bubble game is going to dominate, especially with, and here to me, these are the yards that are going to be gained this year that were missed a year ago, right? A lot of people might criticize DG and the throwing from the hip and all that stuff. With the long ball, he was pretty consistent. He was still as competitive as a lot of guys were nationally. Where OU missed a ton of their hay was the
Change up.
quick perimeter. Yeah, man. Like it
I'm
just,
sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said that. But
yeah.
he threw a changeup. His fastball was an 86 mile per hour changeup.
And man, you saw it in the spring game. There were plays
Oh
where
yeah.
Burks is catching the ball and the safety has barely taken a step towards him. That backer's not even out of his hips yet. He hasn't even shifted his hips, and that ball is on Burks. That's a first down. And that's a first down every time, especially if you're going wide side of the field, if they're moving fast, if they're doing the things that Luttrell wants to be able to do and creating those matchup problems, you're now winning the little yards that you did not win a year ago that beats a Kansas, that beats an Oklahoma State, that gets you, that also opens up things for you vertically. When that is now a threat, you have other options. It also improves your run game because now you're making the defense guard front to back and you're making them guard sideline to sideline. And if you don't do that and force the defense to respect that, you're limiting your game. And to me, it was the reason why. It's why OU couldn't beat Clemson in 15, right? You had Shepard, and then that drop off from Shep to what? Deron Neal, Jeffrey Mead,
Dang, why you
right?
gotta say their names like that? Don't hope nobody don't say my name like that. The drop off from Savage to Mackey. Dang.
That's hilarious. It was a drop off though. Got to call a spade, man. It was from Shep, who is,
Oh, he was a
by the
dog.
way, shout out Tampa, him and Bake gonna
Yes,
be getting
cooking.
after
Them
it.
boys out there cooking.
So they're gonna be formidable, man. 10+ wins for Tampa Bay this year.
We'll see.
I got them right at 10-7. I think that's
Their
about the
division is
mark.
winnable. When you got Carolina for
Yes.
2 wins, we'll see what Atlanta can do now with
With
Cousins
what's
over
it?
there.
Cousins. We'll
And then
see.
New Orleans, they always self-destruct.
But
So
they also
it's
drafted Washington's guy, right? They drafted Penix, didn't they?
ooh, but I don't think they're not he'll probably sit a year. He's in a season a year.
Okay, okay,
He's in a season a
okay.
year.
Interesting. But yeah, man, I think you covered a lot of ground. I really respect your thoughts when it comes to receiver. I do think it's going to be interesting to see just another year of development with Emmett Jones guys. And I
Yeah.
want to get your opinion on this because this is why Emmett Jones is elite. It's why a Bates is elite. They don't just come in and bring the recruiting piece. They come in and they also bring the technical coaching piece, which is what separates the really good coaches from the great elite coaches. And we saw the receiver blocking when Emmett Jones got there from where it was the shift from Gundy to LD to Jones was just night and day, right? And you saw it technically in how guys did the blocks. You saw it in the scheme that they were imploring, that they were running out there, and things they had to do to ensure guys got blocks on the perimeter. And there was also just an attitude, right?
Yeah.
So much of that is your coach. And
Yeah.
what is your coach given? What is the messaging day in and day out? Are you going to take that stuff serious? Are you going to block for your other guy when you only got 3 catches? This guy is, on reception number 8 and 9. Do you still have the same attitude? You might have a game where you don't touch the ball. Are you still bringing that same energy? And now you've got a real problem. Like this is a thing OU is going to have to fight with. You've got a bunch of serious pass catchers, And before we get out of here today, we'll do another stake bet on touchdown receptions this year.
No,
I
we're not
think
doing
that'll
it this
be
early. We're not doing it this early. We gotta wait till camp.
no,
At least
we'll
after
get
camp,
okay.
bro.
We'll get through camp.
Yeah,
We'll see. We'll
yeah,
see who's starting. We'll see. Okay, okay.
yeah.
That's fair. That's fair. But at the end of the day, I
By the way,
think
I'm gonna
it
win.
is. We'll see.
You're buying me a steak this year, by the way. Just
if
just
I
just
if we do, I already got some spots picked out, man. There's I already got some spots picked out. But I think it is the receiving core makes OU a playoff contender, in my opinion. And they, especially if Jackson is able to facilitate their success by hitting some of those pockets that DG missed. There was a lot of yards and a lot of areas in the field where it's the reason why I think, I won't say that. The DG just he missed some spots where some easy yards on balls that if the velocity is a little better and the
sure.
timing is a little better, you've now moved the sticks in a scenario where you couldn't move the sticks. So, my opinion, I think that they have a chance to be the best group in America. Burks has a chance to be an award winner. You know, a Jaden Gibson, who I saw somebody bring him up on X as one of the most under sold players going into this year as a guy who is going to be a factor on the team, possibly be a guy who leads the team in touchdown receptions. Who knows? But a guy who is absolutely a dog and who brings some attitude, who brings a little bit of nasty to the game, and you can see it in how he plays. So the receiving core to me, interesting spot. Man, before we get out of here today, I don't think there's a whole lot more to kind of unpack. I feel like we kind of delved in. Any closing thoughts on that group? Any expectations or I know you said the ceiling is very high for them.
It
They're
is.
a group that can compete with some of the other groups just off the depth, right? But if you were going to have to say out of this group, take Burks away. Here's the question. Take Burks away. Who were the other two guys who could get 1,000 yards this year?
Uh, it's Anderson, and then it's Gibson and or Andrew, depending on how that thing
Okay.
shakes out.
Do
Yeah,
you
I mean,
think OU gets two 1,000 yard receivers, or is it just one?
ask me week 2.
Week
So
two?
give me
Okay.
zero, give me week 0 and week 1 to because I need to
Okay.
see how Seth is gonna
Go.
if Jackson hasn't shown to be trusted to run the playbook like he needs to, Seth has enough depth in his playbook to protect Jackson and to do enough window dressing for the offense to still flow, but it not be an air raid like even Sam Bradford wasn't in an air raid. We just if we throwing the ball, he was throwing that thing down the field, right? So I'll know by week 2
Yeah.
what the offense, the makeup of the offense is going to look like, and at that point we'll know. Here's what I want to touch on. I want to touch on groupings for one thing. I see a lot of people, and you know, I don't know. I don't want to sound or feel like an asshole or anything like that, but like when teams create receiver groupings. All right. And people have heard the terminology or the language like, 11 personnel, 12 personnel, 21 personnel, so on and so forth, right? They're talking about the number of backs and the number of tight ends in a formation. And it always grinds my gears when I see people do a depth chart or anything like that. And they act that they call the slot a wide receiver. Why? Right. And it drives me crazy because um logically speaking, if I am in a formation, right, the defense is always checking strength. And 90% of the time, what do you think defenses address the strength by? Do you know what position? You played football, high school football.
Yeah.
What position was typically the position on offense where the defense would call the strength to? They'd call it to the what?
To the slot side.
To the tight end side. Tight
Tight
end
end side. I
strength.
mean, yeah.
Because
Tight end
strength
side.
is
Yeah.
based upon where we want to address the run, and the tight end is an
Mm-hmm.
extra blocker who could be an extra big, right? So in
Well,
other
it
words,
dictated it jinx, it dictated your safety
yeah,
alignment, it
100%.
dictated,
It
yeah,
dictates your 0 versus your 3. It dictates your Willie versus your Sam. It dictates right if
yeah,
it's strong versus free. Da da da. Yeah, it might even dictate your field and your boundary corner.
yeah.
But the point is, um, there is intention behind a slot being at the Y and a slot being at the H. And more often than not, in order to disguise what you want to do pre-snap, you're not trading a receiver for a tight end. Hopefully, you want a tight end that is versatile enough to be an inline blocker and a slot receiver and even potentially a one-on-one receiver. But the easiest position in football to make that transition is the fullback or H position, right? In fact, most
Mhm.
NFL teams don't even carry a fullback. The Niners and like two or three other teams do. It's because the offense doesn't have to change its makeup very much. So when you're doing a depth chart and you're trying to be cool or you're trying to be different and you're like, oh, the slots play wide, that's it kind of letting people know like you don't really know what you're talking about because the Y position is the already flex position. You're either the inline,
Yeah.
you're off the line of scrimmage, you're the edge person, and you're a guy who can block, right? You can block a big, I guess is what the important thing is. You know, there were times where I had to block a DN where I could, I'd try to, sneak them, or I had to go down and dig out a backer. But, good luck, digging out Torrance Marshall. But a Y in theory can.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
versatility wise, the offense doesn't want to put a slot in for, you know what I'm saying, the tight end. That
Yeah.
does not make sense. It's not the priority or proverbial way to do it. So just when it comes to groupings, it makes sense to look at, you know, which of the inside receivers are more like a Y and which of the inside receivers are more like an H. And I think that is going to be a distinguishing factor. I just uncannily think like Brennan is going to run a lot of Y type routes, over routes, running at
Oh.
the safety routes, running at the safety and stop routes, right? By the way, I think he ran one against, I'm pretty sure he ran like an 18-yard sit route against Arizona where he's running like he's running by the safety. The safety gets out of his hip speeds, turns and he stops, and Jackson has
Yeah.
the arm. Those are the throws that Dillon can't throw, that
Mm.
Jackson can throw, that a Y position is going to take, right? Versus an H who's going to run speed outs, dig routes, corner routes, screens, bubbles. You're not going to have a ton of Y position routes. They're going to be running a ton of posts at the safeties, over routes on top of the backers, or quick outs, right? Or sit route, right? They're going to man up on a backer and either cross his face or block him out. And the the beauty is we'll see at the wide position because we didn't talk about tight ends. We're going to need a Helms or the puppy or one of these guys to step up and be a factor. Otherwise, we
Yeah.
will be small guys at the Y, but it's going to be a detriment to our run game. It's going to hurt our run game, right? So
Mm.
we'll have to figure that piece out. But the versatility, Barry, week zero, you come out. I think, man, I think Anderson starts at X. As much as Andrew was the guy at X, I think you gotta start Anderson. The way the kid
I think
played
you're right.
all season,
Yeah.
I don't know if Andrew is a Z. I don't know. But I,
I
I
think he
think
played Z. No, he played X in Michigan.
I don't.
Or
I
he
didn't. I
might.
didn't. I
Mm.
didn't watch enough of their stuff to see. What I know is they
Yeah.
ran they ran power all day, so
Yeah. It doesn't.
Michigan's a
Yeah.
different route tree than what we run.
Yeah.
Um, but I think Burks is the Z, and then he bumps to H when they're in three. And I think Gibson or it's an or. But I think two back, I think you don't. Burks is not a guy where in two back he's on the bench. Burks is a guy when in two back
Yeah.
he's at Z, and then when you go to 11 personnel, he bumps over to H. And so, um, like for instance, that's what Mark did in '01. Mark was when I got
Okay.
when I go down, there's only
Yeah.
like three of us left. Mark played X and H
Okay.
because there wasn't the depth. And Josh Norman was a guy where some matchups he wasn't a good fit. Mark would play slot. And then if Dre was tired, Mark would go to X. And then of course, Mark got so good, they're like, hey Dre, we can move you to defense because they had so much trust in Mark. Mark's the reason Andre Wolfolk, plays corner and then obviously goes on to play in the first round draft pick. Receiver position is one I'm excited about. Um, I just want to see those guys compete. There isn't one guy. I think Burks is probably a guy who knows. Well, stop doing dumb shit, bro. You know what I'm saying? Regardless to what really
Yeah.
happened,
Be smart.
be smart, man. You're gonna get paid, and you're gonna be a god in Norman. Where you come from? He came from
Purdue.
Yeah, like
Purdue, Big
apples
Ten
and
country.
let me use my old one. Apples and doorknobs, bro. Whatever
Hey
they was
man,
doing for you at Purdue, bro, I'm just letting you know here in Norman, we're gonna take good care of our own, except for OUPD. OUPD, can you relax? You know what I'm saying? Can you let us live just a little bit? They've been hating on us
yeah.
since we was, you know what I'm saying? Like
Oh my
OUPD,
gosh,
oh, Norman PD is cool. If you don't do nothing,
interesting,
OUPD, relax. Like,
interesting.
I don't know. They've always been an issue. But the kid has an opportunity to be a household name. And I'm excited. I think this group has the ability to be one of the top two or three in the SEC, which obviously puts them in one of the top two or three in America.
Let me ask you this before we get it. This is more of a scheme question with Latrell taking over. And it was a miss, in my opinion, especially in the Big 12, where formation could have dictated numbers and defensive advantage so much. And it would have been an easy throw I say easy throw, it would have been over the line of scrimmage. Baker was phenomenal at this, and so was Kyler. With Seth being a more of a Leach disciple, do we see more mesh as a staple in this offense, or do you think that's kind of been phased out in what Latrell is going to do?
So the game itself has kind of evolved past the mesh. The meth, what am I doing that? The
Yeah.
mesh is designed to create a mismatch with one player.
Uh huh.
It's either the middle backer or the field backer, right?
Yeah.
Whereas levels are designed to make the backer and the safety and the whole defender work in a dilemma. And so it's a triangle. So uh there are times where mesh routes work when you're running man, right? You bunch up, you cross each other's face, you try to get a rub, you're good. Or if you're playing a team and they run that 35 umbrella, right? And you've been running your levels and the 35 puts that backside backer where he can already see everything coming towards him. He can sink or he can stay high and
Yeah.
he can really hurt the quarterback. That's how that 35, that the Iowa State, that's how they'd kill us. We'd run our levels routes, one under, one over, and then and then like a tendency breaker. That backer who has the two routes coming, he's already cocked and can see both. He can see who has the bigger window and he sinks into it and he dares the quarterback. Well, the mesh is a that defense breaker, because if the
Mm,
receiver's meshing and he's sinking, you just stop and you it's an easy throw into that initial window. So I think we're going to run levels more than we run mesh now, because it's a better it puts more people um during the snap, right? So defense is three phases of defense, right? There's pre-snap, well, football, both sides of the football.
sure.
Pre-snap, 60% of the play is going to determine who's going to win the snap. It's pre-snap. If we're in the better play based upon what you're showing us on defense and what we have right planned, we have a 6-4 advantage. Defenses know they can disguise and switch shit up, right? So that's how they say, ha, we're in this. No, we're not. We're really in that, right? So that's how they try to take advantage.
Hmm.
Then during the snap, right, the 11 guys have to do what they're required to do. On offense, you want to window dress and make defensive guys look at something that's going to distract them from doing their job, right? That's during the snap, right? So that part, that's like the think tank. Your OC can have a huge impact because the players are just going to do what they're designed, what they're told to do. Hey, you're running a curl, unless they're in this, then the curl turns into a dig. Hey, you're running, a go route, but if he sinks, you're going to sit, right? Like that's rep. So the coaches, that's really where coaching comes into play. And then post snap, right, is where the ball is hiked, the play's in motion. You throw Mark Clayton a slant, it's supposed to go for 7 yards. You throw Burks a slant, it's supposed to go for 8 yards, and he takes it 80, right? Because he's a dude, which is why recruiting matters. And so I say all that to say, um, we didn't have both in our arsenal, or we didn't show both last year. So think about how
Hmm.
much of an advantage that gives the defense. If the defense says, hey, man, I've watched 800 plays of film and I haven't seen you guys show me the tendency, which is levels, which we ran some levels, but then the
Yeah.
tendency breaker, which is levels, and then the mesh concept against it. Oh, shit. That defensive backer is like, bro, there's like a 1% chance. You always say in the back of your head they might, but if they haven't shown it on film, You can say, I'm going to take the odds and do what they've shown me, 49 times they've run levels, and they still haven't shown me a mesh route, but they've seen two other teams beat us, and obviously teams steal each other's successes, right? If you see some team
Yeah.
beating something, you think they might, but I'm like, dude, Levy, bro, you know what I'm saying? Run the mesh off of that and take advantage of what they're giving us. Seth's going to take advantage of that. That's without question. We talked on the sideline at the spring game, and just I like to talk scheme, and he was my fullback, so Seth was honest with me, like, yo, Mac, we got this for that. We got that for this. And if they want to do this, we get to go over there. And, you know what I'm saying? I was like,
Yeah.
this sounds like the OU football I know and love. So I know we will have more home cooking prepped for what happens at the snap and post snap. We're going to make more adjustments. There's going to be more breadth to the adjustments we can make.
Interesting. Yeah, that to me is like the striking difference between the going from a Riley who in pre-snap the window dressing got you in such a good position where when they ran mesh that Hollywood would catch it with nobody within 10 yards of them. And you're taking it. I think against Georgia, he had one almost go to the end zone that they ran it really, really well, but they also had guys who could run it. And then they had guys who were a threat and also quarterbacks who can throw that ball and make sure it's timed well and understand the nuance of that. And then Lebby was a guy who just kind of this is what he runs
Yep.
and he doesn't change off of that. There's no, as you said, tendency breaker. And then you've got Latrell, who I think is a little. I'm not going to put him in the Riley is a brilliant offensive mind, so I think to negate that would be wrong. But Latrell, in terms of what he has shown, a little bit more well-rounded in his approach, and Levy's probably there in another 4 or 5 years. It's just going to take him a second to get there, and maybe that development's halted a little bit with being the head coach now and
Yeah.
whatnot. But we'll see. We'll see. Um, we're not breaking tendencies over here at the Barry and Mack Show at OU Insider. We are consistent with the drops. We're going to keep bringing you guys a bunch of content each and every week. Make sure you're staying tuned in to the Barry and Mack Show wherever you listen to podcasts. Go follow us on X. DMac is at D_Mac13. Find me at BWise Fitness, letter BWISE Fitness. If you're on the Instagram, Damian's got some good stuff over there on the Instagram at Dame That Dude. And then follow me, same thing, at letter BWISE Fitness. And go grab a membership at OU Insider. Be the best thing you ever did this year. They're also running a promo for college students. DMAC, I think it's like $1 a month, right? And so it's it's like $11, right? I should have known the number right off the top of the head. But if you're a student at OU,
Wow.
go grab yourself a membership. If you go over on X, I reposted it. Obviously, the OU Insider, Drum, Parker, all of those guys have reposted it. Really good stuff. Man, Sooner Nation, you guys have shown nothing but love. Talk about it in the comments down below. Let us know what y'all think. Who is going to lead OU in touchdown receptions this year? Who gets 1,000 yards? Is Burks the lead dog in that regard, or do you guys think there's going to be somebody else after fall camp? So only time will tell. The season is almost upon us. But as always, thank you all for tuning in, and we will see you soon.